we're fortunate this morning to actually have someone that's an expert in this space as one of our guests, and that would be Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, an immigration attorney. And we are going to ask her to kind of school us a little bit on immigration and this upcoming Trump administration. Kate, good morning and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. I mean, the intro I gave you was by design because I have taken the position that it'll be a logistical nightmare. We know the economics behind it, but at the same time, you can't have people like, as you probably saw, Tom Homan, the first city that he decided to go and launch his vitriol in was Chicago. He came to the city last week and said, the Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker, he used a descriptive that I don't have to repeat here. But he's talking about get the hell out of the way, or I'm going to prosecute you. That's the kind of vitriol that we don't need. But I know our listeners and viewers want to get maybe a little bit more expert observation from someone like you in terms of what employers have got to prepare themselves for and what communities have to prepare themselves for.
Yeah, sure. It's a lot coming and a lot's going to happen really fast. The thing that, happened in the first administration is that there was, 4 years they were trying a bunch of different things, seeing what stood up in the courts and what, got blocked. And now they've got experience and they've got a plan and they're going to roll a lot of things out quickly. The other difference is that in the first Trump administration, there was a lot of focus on the border, closing down, asylum protections for people. And now, because Biden frankly hasn't rolled back all that much of what Trump did along the border remains pretty closed to asylum seekers. Therefore, the real focus of the Trump 2.0 is going to be interior enforcement and immigration. So in the ways that we saw big splashy action, separation of families, et cetera, on the border, we're going to start to see that inside the United States. And some of the first cities that will be targeted by the federal government are going to be cities that are seen as, some type of sanctuary city, Los Angeles, for example, Chicago, cities like that, because these are cities where the Immigration and Customs Enforcement can't obtain these agreements that they want with local law enforcement agencies. So they start to go in there and conduct more activity, which looks like, picking up people who have outstanding orders, picking up people who are within the criminal justice system, but also just conducting worksite raids, just going to the supermarket where there's a lot of immigrants who shop there and stopping people, asking them for their papers. And this is what we're going to start to see, I think, very quickly.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for that great quick opening in this space. And this is a conversation that I'll just ask you now. I hope that you're willing to come back and talk about this more. Your voice is an incredibly needed voice on this topic. So I'm looking forward to future conversations with you as much as this pre-conversation about what's going to happen. All right. So many times the conversation is southern border, southern border, southern border. Well, we have a northern border as well. And we have something that I don't think gets talked about enough. And so as I'm presenting this to you, I'm trying to do it in a concise manner. This conversation about people who are citizens or going back to the conversation around birthright citizenship, how will this be impacted with in the bigger scheme of immigration, deporting people and birthright citizenship? What's the nexus there?
So birthright citizenship is part of our Constitution. It's the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It says anyone born on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen. And it's also been reviewed by the Supreme Court in the late 1800s. So it's a really firmly entrenched, established part of our laws in this country. So that's not something that a president or the executive branch of the government can just up and change. It would require a constitutional change, which, although there's Republican control of Congress, they don't have enough of a majority to, edit birthright citizenship. However, that doesn't mean we're not going to see attempts by the Trump administration to make waves in the area. So probably what it will look like is we'll start to see children born to undocumented parents, however they get that information, might have difficulty obtaining their documents. Could be, in a state like Texas where I am, where the state is very cooperative. They might start to deny birth certificates, or people might have difficulty obtaining their U.S. passport from the Department of State. But then, of course, those people who are experiencing these delays would be able to bring a lawsuit and would ultimately prevail. So I think at the end of the day, I feel confident that birthright citizenship is not on the chopping block. However, that doesn't mean that we're not going to see a bunch of shenanigans and nonsense that impact people's lives.
So in that space, there's been this sort of, all right, well, if they're going to try to go out after birthright citizenship, it sounds then more like it's been talk, it's been fluff, it's been ways to get people riled up than there to be. And the shameful part of it is the people that are talking this, quote, I'll say trash, don't really understand how the Constitution is going to actually step in or already got a big footprint in this space. Are you seeing that too, or am I off the rails on that one?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of bluster, of course. We know that about this person and the people who support him. The thing that I think, though, is different this go around is how much control they have of the three branches of government. Congress, the courts. There's been a lot of federal judge placements. Of course, the line above the Supreme Court means that a lot of things that wouldn't have gotten through or wouldn't have been acceptable before, now are. So there's a lot of bluster, like things like birthright citizenship are not ultimately going to be taken away, in my opinion. But also there is a lot of stuff being threatened that will probably actually occur and survive court challenge. So I think, understanding how these things are going to play out is a critical piece of digesting all of these threats that are coming our way. So birthright citizenship is one of the few threats that I think is safe, but there's a lot of other things that the administration has said they're going to do that they might get away with and is really concerning and will really impact this country's economy in a negative way.
So we've heard people talk about that, your last piece, and I was making notes. People have heard me say this before, and that is I try not to make notes. I try to listen, but you're saying so many things that I need to make notes of. All right. How, in your observation and your experience, will it be, how will it really impact the economy? And you're in Texas, so you have a unique bird's eye view of certain things. So talk us through that a little bit.
Well, there's the big picture of immigration. We need immigrant labor in all levels of the skill spectrum. So you often hear people talk about, the agriculture sector really needs laborers and U.S. workers won't take those jobs. Yes, that's true. And we also need workers in the mid-skill level and the innovators, the engineers, the IT people. We need immigrants everywhere, and our baby boomers are aging, and we need people to care for them, and we need actually expanded immigration options and more ways for people to come here and work. So number one, if we have a Congress and administration that's focused on only the enforcement part of immigration, we're going to continue restricting ways for people to come here and work, which chokes off our economy, number one. Number two, there is a major focus this go around on apprehending, detaining, deporting the undocumented population and people with temporary status in the United States, like DACA, people, dreamers, people with temporary protected status, people who are on parole. So that group of people plus the undocumented makes up 20% of the workforce in this country if you take all of the immigrants together. So if we conduct, we spend massive resources, there's $100 billion budget in DHS, and we focus those resources on going out and arresting people who have jobs, who are supporting the economy, whose kids are in school, that creates this ripple effect in those communities where they work, in the companies where they work, et cetera. And so it's like this twofold sort of attack on our economy, all in the name of, don't know, immigrants are bad and scary, which isn't actually true, but it's a really strong message politically. It's played super well. It's ultimately gotten Trump elected. And so here we are. If he takes these actions, we're all going to suffer.
Okay. So I have a couple. This is why we're going to have you back, because this is a whole show. All right. So this is a Richard question. I'm African-American, male. And a lot of folks that I've talked to in the Black community have said, I'm not worried about this because, let's just be honest, from a purely, history standpoint, we've been here for a long, long time. We have generations of Black folks, post-enslavement and pre-enslavement, that have been here for a long time. So I can understand when a Black person says, I'm not worried about that in terms of personal, somebody's going to come knocking on my door and snatch me from my house or from my place of work because of my, I've been here. We've been here. I have this question that's just nagging at me. What about people because when we talk about the border, people always say, Kate, the focus is the southern border. And not even the northern border, but more importantly, what about people that have come here from European countries? How is that going to play out? Because as I see it, I don't look at the southern or the northern border or the southern border specifically and go, that's the problem. We have other we have other folks that are here in the United States from other parts of the world that are not brown-skinned people.
It is such a big topic, and I think ultimately why we should all care is that what this comes down to is racism and xenophobia. That's
Come on,
why
Kate.
this message is playing.
Come on, Kate. Preach, lady. Preach.
So I think what we're going to see in these apprehensions and these detentions, of course, is the utilization of racial profiling. How else is a police officer going to suspect someone of illegal entry if they don't actually watch them walking across the border, other than using racial profiling? And none of us should accept policing through racial profiling. So therefore, all of us should care. I mean, economic questions aside, this is just not the way to run a country. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what's underneath all of this? Why is there resistance to immigration, to people who are different than us being in our country? It's because we're afraid of people who look and sound different. It's a feature of humanity. And it's also a futile effort for people who want to resist change in our demography. It is futile. So we're just going to keep having this battle. And I think all of us, of course, it's incumbent upon all of us to resist anything that looks and sounds and feels like racism, which this is.
Wow. That's a clip that we're going to play on our broadcast a number of times, because this is coming not from me, but from someone that's an expert in the field of immigration. I cannot tell you how powerful what you just said is. I know you know it, but what you just said is extraordinarily eye-opening, powerful, that a lot of people don't want to have the conversation about. They just don't, Kate. And I know you know this, so I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to you, so I apologize for that. But I think that, when we talk about this whole big behemoth of immigration, that's left out. It's literally left out of the conversation. What about the people who are here from countries that aren't necessarily brown-skinned countries, if you will? And it's what you just said. So thank you for being, and Henry, who is our board engineer, looked at me as I was asking you this question, and your pause before you answered it was earth-shattering, because you spoke the truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. So I appreciate you having the courage to say that. It's not an easy thing to deal with, but that I appreciate you having the experience also and the courage to speak to that case. So kudos to you for that from little old me. But I give a kudos where they're due, and I know that took courage to say it that way. Let's talk about one other part of this, and as it relates to another little elephant in the room. What could the Biden-Harris administration have done differently and or better in this period of time? I mean, listen, it's an elephant in the room, and I'm not afraid to go, hey, we know that there's some conversations about what didn't happen, what could have happened, and so forth. your observation, just objectively as a professional, what do you see? And then how do we leverage that to go forward?
I think the first thing is the messaging. There was just sort of a void of communication on this side of the conversation, why we need immigration, why immigration is good, why are people saying that immigration is bad, what's underneath all of that. There were very few people within the government having that conversation. They were just glad when they didn't have to talk about immigration. That's sort of how they ran it in their administration. Meanwhile, the other side is just this loud drumbeat, anti-immigration, drug trafficking, human trafficking, immigration equals danger. And nobody was countering that conversation on a regular basis. So it created this belief. It allowed it to grow within our country. And then also the policy rollouts were very slow. So, I mean, on the one hand, I understand the Biden administration had its back up against the wall and everything they did try to roll out got, blocked in the federal courts. I mean, it wasn't as if they could have done a whole lot, with what they had in front of them. However, the Biden administration didn't do a lot early on in his presidency. So there were some, few and minor actions later that, for example, there's this, keeping families together parole program that would have allowed spouses of U.S. citizens to get their green cards without going through this ridiculous 6-year process that they have to go through. And Biden, passed it, announced it in August of 2024. Mm-hmm. Of course, it gets blocked in the court and there's no time to even appeal the decision. So it's not, too slow, not enough, but ultimately just not even really talking about it enough, is my opinion.
My good friend, Eric Grant, who hosts another show on this station, we talks about from a messaging standpoint, and I, to a great extent, agree with this. What you're doing, if people don't know about it, then they don't think you're doing anything. And so going back to your first part of your answer, my wish is that they had said exactly what you said, which is, look, these are the things we're up against, y'all. These are the things that they didn't do. Here's the things that are problematic. Here's what we're fighting for in this space. And then also, really highlight the fact that here's why immigration is beneficial to our country. And y'all need to know this. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Kate, that's one that I just kept saying all along. They need to talk about it. They need to talk about it. They need to talk about it. Even if it's ugly, talk about it so people know we got our thumb on this one. We're trying to fix it. And here's what we're up against. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there just wasn't a champion. There wasn't a powerful champion for immigrants. There hasn't been for years.
Yeah.
In our country.
That's unfortunate. So now that I've taken up your morning and you've been so wonderful to school us, and I told everybody you were going to school us this morning, and you have so wonderfully done that. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I always tell everybody I'm not a gotcha question person, but the question that I did ask you, you definitely put some light on it. And what's next for you? What's going to be your 2025? I've been asking everybody this. How are you, getting ready for 2025 and the next, 2 to 4 years?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty wild ride for me. I'm an immigration lawyer in Texas, and I work with families. So my preparations right now are helping families understand what their emergency plan is going to be. If they're undocumented, who's going to be the person that can pick up the kids if mom or dad get arrested? And does that person have the authorizations that they need? Do we have the documents in order that we need? So it's safety planning right now. Then when the raids and the apprehensions start, we'll be responding to that, trying to keep people in this country, keep people with their families, and supporting immigrants through what is to come.
Yeah. Kate, you got our support. We will always be here for you as a source to talk about what you're doing. We want to have you back as you're in the throes of dealing with this so that you can share the work, the successes that you're having and the challenges. But we will be here for you as an ally in the, tip of the spear work that you're going to be doing. And we thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks. I'd love to come back.
Absolutely. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, immigration attorney in Texas, y'all. So send her some love, send her some holiday love, and let her know that we got her back. Thanks for being with us this morning, and happy holidays, Kate.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye now. Wow. Talk about someone that's right up in there. I mean, she's elbows deep. She said what she's going to be doing in 2025. So when you think about how challenging your life might be, think about the work that she's going to be taking on, and send Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch some love. Google her and find out how you can maybe get involved, how you can help her. That's what we do as progressives. So don't sleep on that. Her name's going to come up again.